Hello there, students of economics. Welcome back to another teaching module in economics. This one's titled Methods of Collecting Primary Data. Well, in this module, I'm taking off from where we left. We started with defining what is statistics, what are the functions and importance of statistics. We went on to begin with collection of data, and there we studied about primary data and secondary data. Now let me take you on. In this lesson, we will learn about the direct personal investigation, the telephonic interview, the mailed questionnaire, and the merits and demerits of each of these methods of collecting primary data. When we go about collecting primary data, we know that primary data is data collected for the first time. It is first-hand, it is original. So when we go about collecting primary data, one of the methods we use is something called as direct personal interview. Now, under this method, the investigator himself visits respondents and asks them required questions. This method is suitable to use when the area of investigation is rather small and when the information that is required is to be kept confidential. So here, there is a high degree of accuracy and therefore direct contact is required. Let us now study the advantages, or what we know as merits, and the disadvantages or the demerits of direct personal interview. So here we go. The first one. It contains a high degree of originality. And why not? We are meeting people face to face here, and we can gauge from their expressions if they are giving truthful answers or not. And we know for sure that the answer is coming from the person that we are interviewing. Comparative study is possible here because we're going from person to person, house to house, family to family, and you can easily compare data. It is economical because you have to remember that we use this method where the geographical area is rather small. It provides uniformity in collection of information because mostly when you go out to personally meet people, you also have with you a list of questions, and so you have gone out or set out yourself for a particular field of study. So in that view, we have uniformity of answers as well. The demerits. This method is not suitable where the area of investigation is wide, because going from place to place, house to house, meeting person to person becomes very difficult when the area is large in terms of money and energy spent as well. Of course, it is a time-consuming method. The possibility of personal biasedness exists in this method. For example, an interviewer may choose those respondents who he feels will give him the answers that he wants to hear. Probably they are his friends and things like that. So there could be favoritism or biasedness. Here is an example where we see direct personal interview. If a person wants to collect data about the working conditions of the workers of Birla Textile Mill, Delhi, he would go to the mill, contact the workers, and obtain the desired information. The information thus obtained is first-hand or original in character. And now moving on to the telephonic interview. Under this method, the investigator asks questions over the telephone. It is considered to be pretty cost-effective. The telephonic interview is suitable, especially where informants hesitate to answer, as in the case of personal investigation. This method can be used where the area of inquiry is wide and the population of our study is wide, and where high degree of accuracy is not required. Let us now look at the advantages and disadvantages of the telephonic interview. This method is cheaper than the personal interview method and can be conducted in a short period of time, right? There is a greater possibility of reaching the customers or the interviewees all over the geographical area. There is a higher rate of response as well as recall, and follow-up is pretty easy. Where the disadvantages are concerned, it is impossible to use a visual aid in this method simply because you are calling up the person and asking a series of questions. There is exclusion of population who do not have a telephonic connection. So you cannot use this method on people of rural areas where there is no coverage of telephones and so on. It is not a reliable method. Why? Because there is no face-to-face contact, and maybe the respondents may give irresponsible answers just to get over with the conversation. The telephonic interview can be used in different types of surveys. Telephone surveys are a form of quantitative market research used to determine and predict attitudes, opinions, and behaviors of a particular group, and this is all based on scientific methods of sampling. The results from telephone surveys are traditionally designed to be representative of the population. Now what this means is, when we use this method to call people, say our population of our study is say 1 lakh people, I may draw a sample from this population of just 1,000 people, and I say that this 1,000 people that I interview represent the entire population which is in the field of my study. Let us now study what the mailed questionnaire is all about. Under this method, the data in a survey are collected through a mailed questionnaire. A questionnaire or a list of questions is sent to each individual by mail with a request to complete and return it by a given due date. Now this method is suitable where informants are educated or literate, where the area of inquiry is wide, and where informants are needed to give information on a regular basis. Let us now study the advantages and disadvantages of the mailed questionnaire method. This method is one that is affordable and cheap. The collection of data here is pretty fast, faster than the data received by way of personal interview method. In this method, many respondents can be included. You can have a wide coverage. If you have addresses, then all you have to do, the enumerator has to do, is post the questionnaires to the respondents. Here, confidential information can be given by respondents, especially if you have open-ended questions in your questionnaire. Now, what is an open-ended question? It is one where you give the respondent the freedom to write or express in his own words. So, since the enumerator is only one who will be going through the questionnaire, which is sent by mail, there is a high degree of confidentiality. Now, what are the disadvantages? This kind of method is limited to those respondents who can read and write. You cannot use this method on those who are illiterate, for example. There is a lower percentage of return of completed forms. However, there can be cases where the questionnaires may be delayed in reaching the enumerator. No observation exists here to supplement the data collection. What we mean here is that there is no face-to-face contact. Now, this method is best used when the postal system is efficient, when addresses are available, when in-depth interviews are not required, and if you have the luxury of time. Now, here are some applications where these methods can be used. First, customer surveys. These surveys help us to understand customers and work on any feedback provided by them to grow. They can be used in market research and marketing surveys, which are helpful for a brand to assess whether products are reasonably priced. You can gather feedback from consumers, measure their level of awareness, and so on. They can be used in community surveys as well to get feedback regarding the various activities conducted within an association. We can use these methods in human resource surveys, which can be used by businesses and organizations for employee evaluation, employee satisfaction, employee engagement, and so on. We can use these methods in industrial surveys, wherein information from consumers of different industries like event management, hotel industry, fast food industry, transportation, just to name a few. We can use these methods in academic surveys. They help us to assess the parent-student feedback on a course evaluation. They help in curriculum planning, training sessions, and so on. Now with the new educational policy coming about, parents, teachers, and other stakeholders are constantly having to, take surveys and give their viewpoint of their feedback, what they think of the new education policy. Non-profit surveys can also use these methods, wherein you can give feedback from various donors, volunteers, stakeholders, and any other participants of a non-profit organization's activities. Now here is a little activity that I want you to do. This activity will help us to compare and differentiate between various methods. Now, on what basis do I want you to compare and differentiate? I want you to compare and differentiate on the basis of definition, time required, cost effectiveness, suitability, reliability, and accuracy. So what I want you to essentially do is reproduce this table onto your notebooks, and on the basis of what we have discussed in this video, I'd like you to complete the table. So today we have learned about the three methods of collecting primary data, that is the direct personal interview, the telephonic interview, the mailed questionnaire method, as well as we looked at the merits and demerits of each of these methods. And like always, I'm ending my video with some quotes. I liked a couple of them, and here is the first one given by Geoffrey Moore, an American management consultant and author. He says, without big data analytics, companies are blind and deaf, wandering out onto the web like deer on a freeway. So what he is essentially trying to say is that statistics, data, information is a very important part for businesses and companies, without which they would be just wandering aimlessly. Here is another quote I liked very much, given by Carly Fiorina. She's the ex-CEO of Hewlett Packard, HP. She says, the goal is to turn data into information and information into insight. So what she is trying to say is that the whole process of collecting data, analyzing it, interpreting it, is for a higher purpose. It should lead us to some further thinking or insight into a particular problem or issue, maybe to even better ourselves in a particular field or area. Okay, so I'll leave you with these thoughts, and thank you very much for giving me a listening ear.